Back in the code, let's go to the bottom of the file. Now it's time to get all the courses along with their authors. So let's enable this function, list courses. So in this function, we're calling the find method to get all the courses, and we're selecting only their name property. Let's save the changes back in the terminal. Node population.js. So look, we only have underline ID and name. Now here, if I add author and run this program one more time, look, our second document has an author, but we're only getting the reference or the object ID here. In a real-world application, you want to load this author document so we can display its name. That's where we use the populate method. So here after find, we can call populate. As the first argument, we specify the path to a given property. So in this case, our property is author. And because earlier when defining the course model, let's have a look here. So here's our course model. When defining this, we set author to be an object ID, and we referenced the author collection. So when we load a course object and populate the author property, Mongoose knows that it should query the authors collection in MongoDB. So back in the list courses function, we simply call populate and pass author as the name of the target property. Now let's see what happens. So back in the terminal, let's run this one more time. Okay, look, our first document, our first course doesn't have an author, so we don't get anything. But our second document, our second course, has an author, and here we have a complete representation of an author document. Now, in a real-world application, an author can have multiple properties. Perhaps when showing the list of courses, we don't want to get all those additional properties. We just want to get the name property. So back in the code, when calling the populate method, as the second argument, you can specify the properties that you want to include or exclude. So we want to include only name. Now back in the terminal, let's run this application one more time. So this time, our author property is an object with only two properties, ID and name. Now we can also exclude this underline ID property. So back here, we add dash to exclude the property, and the name of the target property is underline ID. Save. Back in the terminal. Let's run this one more time. And now our author property is an object with only one property, name. It's also possible to populate multiple properties. For example, let's imagine each course has a category, and category references a category document. So here we can call populate again, add category, and optionally pick only the name property of each category document. Now let me show you one last thing before we finish this lecture. Earlier I told you that in Mongo we don't have relationships for data integrity in our database. So here in our courses collection, it is possible to set this author to an invalid document. So let's change this to, instead of 0C, to 1C. We don't have an author with this ID in this database. So update. You see, MongoDB is perfectly fine with this operation. Now back in the terminal, let's run this program one more time. See? Now our author is null because there is no author with the given ID in our database.